Beautiful woman, welcome. Welcome to my space. Welcome to my corner of the planet of the world. I am Melissa Louise, your absolute pleasure advocate, erotic blueprint, sex, intimacy, and relationship coach. And I want to spend some time with you just right now in this video, sharing with you why your pleasure is so important. This word pleasure often conjures up these words of, something that can be, granted, or it needs to be earned after we've done all of the work, after all of the list has been, ticked off, when we, find enough time, which becomes more and more difficult. Pleasure is often placed into the corner of something being frivolous, something that, it doesn't need to be given much credit to, that can be done without, whilst we get on with, our life. I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely rubbish. And it's actually that kind of thinking is what is creating, an absolute cascade, a ripple effect out into our health, into our wealth, into our relationship, which then goes out into our family, which then goes out into our community and world. Women deeply rooted in their pleasure actually have the capacity to change the world. That is what I truly believe, and it's what I see, it's what I witness, and it's what I know deeply in my bones. Now, just coming down into the physiology of how our body works with hormones is when when our body has used up all of the testosterone that it has, it starts to produce cortisol. The most quickest way to flush cortisol out of the body is through pleasure, because pleasure produces dopamine and oxytocin, and that flushes cortisol. You cannot have high levels of dopamine and oxytocin in the body, serotonin, along the same level as having, at the same time as having cortisol. Now, a woman's body only has between 13 and 15% of testosterone available to it, or to them. We as women only have that amount, but let's say 15% of testosterone available to us at a time, as in accordance to a man's body. Now, the testosterone is one of those hormones that really allows us to go forward and drive and get things done. Now, this doesn't mean that we are incapable and we can't get things done. What it means is our body needs to work in a different way when we are doing things, when we're in our world. So we currently have a world that is made by a few men for the experience of men. It's run under the sun calendar, and this may sound a little bit woo-woo for a few of you, but our world is run under the sun calendar, and yet the female body is governed by the moon. So what men go through in a 1-day cycle, in a 24-hour cycle, our body goes through in a moon cycle. So the whole 28, 29-day cycle of the moon, which our body is governed under, is what the men go. They get up in the morning, they're rejuvenated, they, boom, it's a new day, boom, it's a new day, boom, it's a new day. Whereas our system works in a really different way. So that is one umbrella of how different our bodies are. So coming back to pleasure, it's like as soon as we have depleted our testosterone levels, now we're running on cortisol. We need to produce cortisol to keep on going. So this sort of notion that we get up and we're on and we just move and drive is really detrimental to our body. When a woman is in that high drive, when we're in constant cortisol, constant masculine energy, we're actually separating ourselves from our power. And our power is, as a feminine, we have a menstrual cycle, which is so exquisite. I'm not going to go too far into this in this video. It's not, I could be here for a whole 2-hour coaching session on this. And this is like when I work with clients, it's these incredible downloads and these incredible conversations that we get to have. But, as a woman with a menstrual cycle, even when we have walked through the purple tent and we're in regenopause, this is a whole another topic. When we get into regenopause, it's we are more, we are wiser, we have more available to us. But when we live a life that's cortisol driven, where we're not taking care of our needs, we're not taking care of our rest, we're not taking the space to be silent, when we're not working with our cycle, then our pleasure is completely depleted, which allows us to reboot our hormones. Then we are really separated from our superpower, which is, the feminine is the oracle. We have this ability to, we feel through the world. Our felt senses felt in our body. This is where our truth lies. Our truth lies in our body. Now, all of this tracks back to our pleasure. If we're not in our pleasure, like, I love this word pleasure, but for many people, the word of pleasure is like, oh, we all just lie around having orgasms. That is one part of it. It is our orgasmic nature is a huge part of our health. It's our heart health, our organ health, our digestion, our skin, our vitality, our ability to be really well, truly grounded in the world is through our pleasure. We have a culture deeply rooted in keeping us separate from our pleasure, making sure that we are full of cortisol, that we're in high drive, that we're exhausted, so that we are separate from our truth. And our truth always shows up in our body. Our truth lies in our body. We feel our truth. We are not crazy. It's not this thing about, oh, that's just woo-woo, and it's, not to be, taken notice of. It is the power of the feminine. The power of the feminine lies in our body, lies the truth in our body. This is our truth. We feel it. Yet it begins from the moment that, we're a girl. I won't go into all of the political agenda around pharmaceutical companies and all of that stuff around, making sure that we believe that our body is something that's against us. It's something that needs fixing. But our pleasure is not this thing of just going out and using it to get what we want. We don't go and use, that's also another thing that comes up with pleasure, because pleasure often is then attuned to sex, and sex is this thing that we get to use to get what we want as a manipulation. It's not that at all. You can be a single woman that's not in partnership and yet tracking with you, tracking, I guess that's a really good word for it, really attuning to your pleasure, using your orgasmic states, using your pleasure to open, to reboot. Having pleasure is also grounding on Mother Earth. You've been on the computer for an hour and a half, you've been working, you've been like, push, and maybe 2-3 hours, and then just going out and having a cup of tea in the sun, standing in the sun gazing, making sure that vitamin D gets into your skin, having your bare feet on the grass, laying under the tree. That is pleasure. Pleasure is also breath, taking deep breaths. Pleasure is also moving our body. We really need to be rooted. There we go. Grounded and rooted is a new word. We need to be really grounded in our body to feel what is correct. Having our felt sense leading the way. And for that, we need to cultivate this relationship with our body, cultivate the relationship with our pleasure. A lot of our, dis-ease comes from, not a lot, all of disease comes from inflammation. Inflammation comes from stress. Stress is being separate from our body. When a woman's tissues are truly hydrated, we are in our health, we are in our wealth. Hydration is so important for health, in all bodies, male and female bodies, but especially because when I'm talking about the female pleasure, our pleasure allows our tissues to be hydrated. When our tissues are hydrated, we're in true health. This is right coming down to our pelvis, it's coming down to our organs, it's coming down to, even our bones, it's coming down to, our skin, the health of our skin. Now, a well-fucked woman, a woman who is well-fucked, she is glowing and she's magnetic. So if we even go into the realms of manifestation, which manifestation is also, that word manifestation, going out and getting what we want, is beautifully, it's a masculine drive. It's like do, as create, whereas when we're magnetizing towards us our life, what we want, magnetizing, what we're here to, what we've landed on the planet, in the world, what we've come to do, what is our expression, what is our gifts in the world, then we create the environment of ourselves. We cultivate what we desire. We cultivate our own selves. We cultivate the pleasure in our life, in the way that we dress, the food that we eat, the five senses. There are so many parts to this. The tantrics have always talked about, the five senses, the sex and magic is all of that, the five senses. But in the feminine body, we do need to have this housekeeping of our five senses. What we touch, what we smell, what we see, what we taste, what we hear. Our words are our magic. This is all of a part of our pleasure. It's all a part of the housekeeping. I would like to think of a better word, the housekeeping of our senses, of how we live our life. When we look at the nurturing part of the feminine, men have this energy in them as well. It's not just for women, but the nurturing part of who we are in our feminine energy. It's also around pleasure. It's like the way that we hold our loved ones, it's the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves is a huge part of the hydration of our tissues. How we touch ourselves, how we touch our lover, how that then becomes a symbiotic act, a symbiotic existence of how we speak to one another, how we look at one another, how we drop in to our partnerships, to our loverships, with our children, with our dear friends, with the people that we create business with. How are we with them is a huge part of then what happens, what ripples out. The feminine, the woman in her feminine energy, it's not this frivolous, sort of high-pitched, run around in soft, flowy dresses. It was a beautiful part. If you love that, fucking go for it. But it's not just that. It's who we truly are in our body. Often people talk about the clitoris is just designed for pleasure. It's so much more than that. The clitoris has a huge, well, the Taoists call it the first gateway. I call it the second gateway because our labia lips are the first gateway. But the clitoris as a gateway to our pleasure has a really big role to play, a huge role. It's there for physical pleasure, and therefore you can have a clitoral orgasm and boom, we're done. Just clitoral orgasms are fucking amazing. They have a huge role to play in what happens into the vagina after that, also what happens into the uterus. So our body that is, geared to pleasure is a huge part of our health, which I've mentioned a few times through this, but it's the health of our organs, our heart, but it's also necessary and needed when we are sexually engaging with our lover, with our partner. The physical orgasm starts as the first gateway. It's like, it guards. And so it's the gateway to then everything else that opens. So understanding that your pleasure is not something frivolous to just have when there's enough time, and it's always at the bottom of the list. Your pleasure is the core of your existence. And it's something that happens in a minute, in 5 minutes. It's something that you keep coming back into the foundation of to get through your day, to really have a day that is well organized, well lived, well existed. The pleasure is even just coming back into sitting in water, being next to a river, taking a moment to drop back into breath. Pleasure is using your orgasmic state. There's one thing I want you to know. Out of all of the things, a woman is an orgasm. We are orgasmic. We are a walking orgasm. This doesn't mean we're always like high off in a kite, high off as kites in orgasm. But our body is an orgasmic state. It surrenders and opens to orgasm. A man doesn't give you, your lover doesn't give you an orgasm. Our body opens and surrenders to the places that we feel so safe and we trust, and we can open more and more and more, because there's so much spiritual work, emotional work, and physical work through orgasm that our body tries to, that our body needs. And we can go into the whole spiritual path, at another time, but the way that we have connection to God consciousness through our pleasure, through our orgasmic state. The Taoists teach this. One of the most favorite parts in the Taoist culture that I really enjoy, that I really attune to, that I feel is so true in my body, is sex is designed for the female body to feel more, because we have all of this spiritual work to do through our orgasm. Sex is designed for the female body to feel more. In our current culture, what the images through pornography, the way that sex is used to sell, sex is designed, or sex, the message that we are given in our culture is sex is something that you go out and get, something that you do. Sex is not something that you do. It's not an act. It's a place that we go to. These are beautiful subjects that I deeply dive into with my clients. But what I just want you to know through this video, and thank you so much for spending this time for listening to me as I go on my opening of like, oh, imparting just my passion. Being your pleasure advocate is about being deeply rooted in your health, in your wealth. And wealth isn't just money, but yes, in your wealth and in your well-being. Your pleasure is absolutely necessary in your life. It is a non-negotiable for so many reasons. I feel like your pleasure is like this. It's like the throne. It is, you sit at the throne in your whole life, and everything that needs to happen and everything that occurs in our life, you know, ripples out from here as you sit on the throne of your pleasure, tritating to that, coming back to your pleasure. You know, understanding how pleasure works in your body, having that as your power, because these are your boundaries, these are your invitation. Your pleasure as a woman is non-negotiable. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for receiving. I really hope that this transmission, that this sharing, that this passion of mine really dings something, you know, really, you know, contributes something to you right now. If you would like to work more with me, if you just want to be more in my spaces, then make sure you get into, I have a private Facebook group for women. It's called Inside of the Pleasure Studio. The links will be, you know, coming to you if this is in my Facebook, you know, this video is, you know, as you've got into my email list. I'm rebuilding an Instagram, dabbling in rebuilding an Instagram handle after my last 8 years of work have been taken down, so that, you know, the Instagram handle is Sex, Love, Water and Intimacy, but for Sex, Love, Water, Intimacy, SX is just the first word. It's not, don't put the E in there. Melissa Louise, just search for me. melissalouise.world is my website. And if you find me in all of those spaces, you know, reach out to me if you're interested in working with me. I hold retreats here there's one in October when I'm making this video, but here in Mexico, I hold retreats. I do private retreats. I travel around the world to speak. And all of that, just welcome to my space, and be here, reach out, receive, contribute. Let's dance together in this world. We are designed for excellence. And that is my mission, that every human that comes across my path, every human that's here, that we keep on unfolding and opening to our excellence. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. That can seem a little bit woo-woo. When I first heard it, I was just like, bah. And the layers and the layers and the layers are open to truly understand this, that we are so connected. We connected through the waters. Our bodies are made up of water. There is so much connection with every other human, with our planet Earth. This is what we're here for. We are not separate from one another. We're not separate from Mother Earth. We're not separate from however you look at whatever God consciousness is, whatever spirit is. So we're all connected. And if that is all just too much, if that is like, oh my God, she's enough, you know, who is this woman? Even understanding how connected you are to your children, if you have children, to your babies, to your partnership, to your loverships. We are so connected, and it's so much fun. This is the thing, is like, it can get really serious, but it's also so much fun. It is so divine. It is exquisite. Okay, lover, I'm going to sign off. I really hope the next moments are just, you have all of these incredible, you know, sort of thoughts and openings, and that your next moments are so wonderful. And may you fill your life with pleasure, always.